Okay. So that was Numbers 19. That was the red heifer sacrifice. As I mentioned, I'll probably put that in its own teaching. It might be a good one to send to, if you know any Jewish people, because that's what Yeshua did when he was explaining that he was Mashiach to people. He went through the scriptures and showed them himself through them. And I think that since it's such a big mystery to Jewish people, that that might be a good thing for them to see. Well, we're going to cover numbers 20 and 21 in the second and third part. So, as I mentioned at the beginning, the overarching theme that we're going to see in them is how people regard Yehovah's word and how Yehovah regards people who regard his word in certain ways. So, verse 1 of chapter 20 says, "And the children of Israel, all the congregation, came into the wilderness of Sin in the first Chodesh, and the people stayed in Kadesh." So now we are into the first Chodesh of the third year since they left Mitzrayim, Egypt. And Miriam died there and was buried there. And there was no water for the congregation, and they assembled against Moshe and against Aharon. And the people contended with Moshe and spoke, saying, "If only we had died when our brothers had died before Yehovah," when our brothers died before Yehovah. So what we are actually seeing here is very similar to the events of the first generation. I was wrong in saying it was the first Chodesh of the third year. It's not. We're talking about the second generation of people here. So they're coming and they're doing exactly the same thing. And as it happens, this is in exactly the same place that the first generation rebelled in this way. They said, "Why have you brought up the assembly of Yehovah into this wilderness, that we and our livestock should die here? And why have you brought us up out of Mitzrayim to bring us to this evil place, not a place of grain or figs or vines or pomegranates, and there is no water to drink?" So the complaints here are the same complaints that they had previously. "Why have you brought up the assembly to die in the wilderness?" They were contending with Moshe, which, as we'll see, is contending with Yehovah, and there was no water. Verse 6 says, "Then Moshe and Aharon went from the presence of the assembly, or from the panim of the assembly, to the door of the tent of meeting, and they fell on their panims, and the esteem of Yehovah appeared to them. And Yehovah spoke to Moshe, saying, Take the rod and assemble the congregation, you and your brother Aharon, and you shall speak to the rock before their eyes, and it shall give its water, and you shall bring water for them out of the rock, and give drink to the congregation and their livestock." So in this case, this is how Yehovah decides to respond. And it's different from what he instructed for the first generation. For the first generation, he said, "Strike this rock, and it will bring forth water." For these people at this time, he says, "Speak to the rock and give the congregation water to drink." Yehovah is sovereign, of course, and he decides how he's going to respond to different events differently. And the overwhelming situation that we have here is exactly the same as the first generation. However, the context of this happening is not the same as for the first generation. Now, this rod that was spoken of is the rod by which Moshe does these signs. It's a rod that Yehovah gave to him at the burning bush. "Take this rod in your hand with which you shall do the signs." Of course, rod is a symbol of somebody's authority as well. So take the rod and go and do this. Exodus 16, 4-10, we're going to see the event as it happened for the first generation. Yahovah said to Moshe, "See, I am raining bread from the heavens for you, and the people shall go out and gather a day's portion every day in order to try them, whether they walk in my Torah or not. And it shall be on the 6th day that they shall prepare what they bring in, and it shall be twice as much as they gather daily." And Moshe and Aharon said to all the children of Israel, "At evening you shall know that Yahovah has brought you out of the land of Mitzrayim. And in the morning you shall see the esteem of Yahovah, for he hears your grumblings against Yahovah. And what are we that you grumble against us?" Just like the second generation were grumbling against Moshe, these people are too. And Moshe said, "In that Yahovah gives you meat to eat in the evening, and in the morning bread to satisfaction, for Yahovah hears your grumblings which you make against him. And what are we? Your grumblings are not against us, but against Yahovah." In the same way, the second generation's grumblings were not against Moshe and Aharon, they were against Yahovah. Moshe said to Aharon, "Say to all the congregation of the children of Israel, come near before Yahovah, for he has heard your grumblings." And it came to be, as Aharon spoke to all the congregation, the children of Israel, that they looked toward the wilderness, and see, the esteem of Yahovah appeared in the cloud. And they tested regarding gathering on the Sabbath day. Exodus 17 follows on from that event and says, "All the congregation of the children of Israel set out on their journey from the wilderness of Sin, according to the command of Yahovah, camped in Rephidim, and there was no water for the people to drink." So the same circumstances. "Therefore the people strove with Moshe," exactly the same, "and said, 'Give us water to drink.' And Moshe said to them, 'Why do you strive with me? And why do you try Yahovah?' The people thirsted there for water, and the people grumbled against Moshe and said, 'Why did you bring us out of Mitzrayim to kill us and our children and our livestock with thirst?' The second generation, 'Oh, that we had died with our brothers.' Then Moshe cried out to Yahovah and said, 'What am I supposed to do with this people? Yet a little while, and they shall stone me.'" Okay, so it's the same as with Joshua and Caleb. All the way through, what we see when these people are in the wilderness, and what we see of people generally now and afterwards in the country of Israel, people contend with those who come to tell them the truth. The prophets come, they want to kill the prophets, etc. When people rebel against the word that is brought to them, they like to blame the leadership who are delivering the word, or the prophet who's delivering the word, and they find a way to justify not listening to that prophet, like with Jeremiah. Oh, he's trying to weaken the hands of the people, and the prophet that Charlie mentioned recently, Micaiah, they find a way to doubt them, and oh no, we're not going to listen to what Micaiah says. He's always prophesying negatively. So they find a way to justify not listening to whichever authority it is delivering the word to them. And then, absent that authority, once they've got rid of that authority or justified not listening to them, they can then change their worship. They change their interpretation of the word, because they're no longer receiving sound doctrine. They've gathered to themselves teachers having itching ears, or false prophets, or whatever that looks like at that stage in history, and they change those things to what is more palatable to them. And we hear them say things like, "Let us elect or choose a leader for ourselves and go back to Mitzrayim," because with that authority absent, we can now change the word and we can make it more palatable to us. So Moshe knows these people, and he says they're going to take up stones and they're going to stone me. Yehovah said to Moshe, pass over before the people and take with you some of the elders of Israel, and take in your hand your rod with which you smote the river, and go. Same rod. See, I am standing before you there on the rock in Horeb, and you shall smite the rock, and water shall come out of it, and people shall drink. And Moshe did so before the eyes of the elders of Israel. And he called the name of the place Massah and Meribah, because of the strife of the children of Israel, and because they tried Yehovah, saying, is Yehovah in our midst or not? So to try Yehovah is to say, essentially, Yehovah needs to act in this situation. When Hasatan said to Yeshua, cast yourself off from the top, and the word says that he will have his angels to stop you from dashing your foot on a stone. And Yeshua said, yes, it does say that, but it also says, don't try Yehovah. So in this, they were relying on Yehovah for their provision, or saying, rather, if Yehovah is the one who gives us provision, then he must in this situation. Okay, they weren't trusting in him, they were trying him, which is something that we have to be very careful that we don't do in our own lives. People often think that they're trusting in Yehovah when actually what they're doing is trying him. Point yourself in a dangerous situation, for example, and saying, oh, I'm going to be fine because Elohim promises to protect me, just like Yeshua was tempted with, is trying Yehovah. It's not trusting in him. But if you're in a difficult situation, a dangerous situation, and you can't remove yourself from it, then you would trust Yehovah to look after you in that situation. But we don't put ourselves in those situations. These people, they were trying Yehovah, they were testing him and saying, is he in our midst or not? Numbers 14, 20 to 23 says, and Yehovah said, okay, when Moshe comes and he asks for forgiveness for this group of people, for the first generation, it says, and Yehovah said, I shall forgive according to your word. But truly, as I live, and all the earth is filled with the esteem of Yehovah, for none of these men who have seen my esteem and the signs which I did in Mitzrayim and in the wilderness, and have tried me now these 10 times, and have disobeyed my voice, shall see the land of which I swore to their fathers, nor any of those who scorn me shall see it. So what we have to appreciate is Yehovah deals with different people according to what they have done previously. Okay, the first generation were different from the second generation. Yehovah was appreciating something different from the second generation than from the first generation. We shouldn't expect that in every situation where the sin is the same, that Yehovah's punishment is going to be the same. We can see how seriously he takes certain sorts of things, but these people had tested Yehovah 10 times by the time they were told, you cannot enter into the land. Okay, the second generation were in a different position, but we're going to see within the course of this Torah portion that Yehovah increases his punishment towards them. The sins of both generations were the same, but we see that the punishments got worse as the sins increased cumulatively. And we're going to see that within this Torah portion with the second generation. Here we see little flecks, little flavors of what the first generation, how they rebelled. And they said, why have you brought us into this wilderness? Why are we not going to the promised land? 1 Corinthians 10, 1 to 13 tells us something interesting about both generations and about our lives in the light of what happened to them. Okay, it says at the beginning, "For I do not wish you to be ignorant, brothers, that all our fathers were under the cloud and all passed through the sea, and all were immersed into motion in the cloud and in the sea, and all ate the same spiritual food." So what this is saying is those people who are in the wilderness have the same spiritual food that you have. This isn't talking about manna. Okay, manna is not spiritual food. Manna is physical food. It's bread from heaven, but it was physical food. It wasn't spiritual in nature. They all ate of the same spiritual food that we do, the word of Elohim. They all had the word of Elohim. We're told in Hebrews that it didn't profit them because it was not mixed with belief. It goes on. All drank the same spiritual drink, for they drank of that spiritual rock that followed, and the rock was Messiah. Okay, so this is not saying that the rock at Horeb, out of which they drank, was Messiah. It's also not saying that that rock followed them about in the wilderness, as we'll see, but that's quite a common belief. Okay, they drank of the same spiritual drink and ate of the same spiritual food is all a setup for what we're going to read about how they sinned, but we shouldn't sin. Okay, they had the same food, the same drink, spiritually speaking, to nourish them as we have. But it did not profit them, not being mixed with faith. They drank of that spiritual rock that followed. The rock was the Mashiach, just as we do. It's like when it says, do not try Mashiach as they tried Mashiach. But it's not talking about the rock out of which they drank, the physical rock. It's talking about the spiritual rock, the spiritual food, the spiritual drink. It was Mashiach. It's all talking about the word of Elohim. Okay, the word for follow, as you can see here, is akolutheo. Akolutheo. You can see in the definition at the bottom, from G1 as a particle of union, and kaluthos, a road, properly to be in the same way with. Like Yeshua says, follow me. He's not going to then walk somewhere that we're to physically walk behind him to get there. When we follow Messiah, we are in the same way with him. It says here, side with his party. That is what it is to follow in the sense of that word. Obviously, the English word follow can also mean when someone goes somewhere physically that you walk to that same place. But that's not how the rock followed them. Okay? People often mistake that verse, and so they then think when it says, smite the rock the first time and speak to the rock the second time, it destroys a picture of Mashiach. This is something I've believed in the past. It destroys the picture of Mashiach, that Mashiach is to be struck twice. Okay, but that's not the rock that it's talking about. It's important for us to understand exactly what 1 Corinthians is saying, because it is saying something very important. Psalm 95, verse 6 to 10 says, come, let us bow down, bend low, let us kneel before Yehovah our Maker, for he is our Elohim. We are the people of his pasture and the sheep of his hand. Today, if you would hear his voice, do not harden your hearts as in Meribah, as in the day of Massah in the wilderness, when your fathers tried me and have proved me, though they saw my work. For 40 years I was grieved with that generation and said, they are a people who go astray in their hearts, and they do not know my ways. Even though they all drank of the same spiritual food, spiritual drink we have, they ate the same spiritual food, they drank of that same spiritual rock, Mashiach, that we have, went astray. So 1 Corinthians 10 continues. However, even though they had all the same stuff we have, with most of them, Elohim was not well pleased, for they were laid low in the wilderness. And these became examples for us so that we should not lust after evil as those indeed lusted, because they had the same spiritual food, same spiritual drink, the same spiritual rock, being examples for us of what happens when you depart from that. Okay, you lust after evil as they lusted. You see what happens to them. Don't become idolaters as some of them in the golden calf. As it has been written, the people sat down to eat and to drink and stood up to play. Don't say, tomorrow we will have a feast to Yahovah, and then go about doing some kind of idolatrous practice or whatever that looks like. Don't try and make your worship of Yahovah acceptable to him when what it actually is a form of idolatry. Neither should we commit fornication as some of them did. And in one day, 23,000 fell. We're going to learn about that next week. Okay, they were all tempted away into fornication at the council of Bilam. In one day, 23,000 of them fell, and we should learn from their example. They've got the same spiritual food, drink, rock. Learn from what happens if equipped with those things, you go astray in these ways. Neither let us try Messiah as some of them also tried. That's what we've just been reading about. They tried me and they proved me. They were destroyed by serpents. Okay, so we're going to see this event happen in this Torah portion. This event is what the second generation did. We've just read about them being at Merivah. Okay, and we're going to read of them being destroyed by the fiery serpents as a result. Neither grumble, as some of them also grumbled and were destroyed by the destroyer. We've just read about them grumbling. All of these came upon them as examples, and they were written as a warning to us on whom the end of the ages have come, so that he who thinks he stands, let him take heed lest he fall, because all of those people thought that they stood. All of them believed that Yahovah exists. All of them had that spiritual food, spiritual drink. They all had that spiritual rock that we have. Thinking that they stood and that Elohim was with them, they fell. And we can do exactly the same thing. No trial has overtaken you except as is common to man, and Elohim is trustworthy and shall not allow you to be tried beyond what you are able, but with the trial shall also make the way of escape, enabling you to bear it. And as it turns out, that's possibly what Elohim was doing with the second generation here. Okay, Psalm 81 verse 7 says, I proved you, I tested you, I tried you at the waters of Merivah. But we know that Yahovah does not allow you to be tested beyond what you are able, and with the test, he gives you a way to pass the test, so to speak. Moshe took the rod from before Yahovah, as he commanded him, and Moshe and Aharon assembled the assembly before the rock, and he said to them, Hear now, you rebels. I want you to take note that the Hebrew word is the word marah. Do we bring water for you out of this rock? Then Moshe lifted his hand and struck the rock twice with his rod, and much water came out, and the congregation and their livestock drank. So like I said, it doesn't follow from the texts that people use to explain that this striking of the rock was the striking of Messiah, because that spiritual rock that they have and we have was not the physical rock out of which the water came, although you can see where that confusion would creep in. Yahovah says to Moshe, I want you to speak to the rock and I want you to bring forth water from the rock. He also said that he's trying them. So it's entirely possible to me that what Moshe's doing in not believing him in this is actually not giving them the way out of it, a way to pass the test. He's saying, go and speak to the rock so that it brings forth water. Okay. When Moshe didn't do that, as we're going to see in a little bit, he is accused of not believing Yahovah. Also something else which is very interesting. But take hold of the fact that it says the word rebel, the verb rebel, and it's used here to describe ones who rebel, is mara, because that's going to be used in an interesting context with Moshe shortly. In verse 12 of Numbers 20, it says, "But Yahovah spoke to Moshe and to Aharon, saying, because you did not believe me to set me apart in the eyes of the children of Israel, therefore you do not bring this assembly into the land which I have given them." This is a passage, much like the red heifer sacrifice, which has caused many people just to throw up their hands and say, I don't actually know what Moshe and Aharon did wrong. We can see what they did wrong. They didn't do what they were told, but we don't see why it was them not believing in order to set him apart or to make him holy. Well, the answer lies in the word kadash. Okay, to kadash is to consecrate something, to set it apart, or to make it holy. As we know, this is Blue Letter Bible. But as you can see here, what the verb means is dependent upon what form of the verb appears. We've got a kal form, the nafal, piel, pual, hifil, and hithpael form, which are all used in the scriptures. The form of the verb which is used here is the hifil form. It can mean to set apart, to devote, to consecrate. But what the context of this is, and the context of the events which surround it, is to regard or treat as sacred or hallowed or set apart or holy or whatever word you want to use, to regard as holy. So, Yehovah spoke to Moshe and to Aharon, because you did not believe me to regard me as holy in the eyes of the children of Israel, to treat him as holy. These were the waters of Meribah, because the children of Israel contended with Yehovah, and he was set apart among them. Okay, so you didn't believe me to set me apart in the eyes of the children of Israel, or as we've seen, more likely to regard me as set apart in the eyes of the children of Israel, to treat him as set apart, to show that that's how you regard him. In verse 13, it says he was set apart among them. But the form of the verb that we have here is the nafal form, which is to show oneself sacred or majestic, to show oneself to be set apart. So, Moshe and Aharon did not believe him to treat him as set apart before the children of Israel. However, he was shown to be set apart before them because of his actions. Numbers 27 says to Moshe this time, because you rebelled against my mouth, you marad against my mouth in the wilderness of sin, in the merivah of the congregation. Okay, that's not the noun merivah it's used there. It's a modified form of the word merivah, the Hebrew word merivah, so we can see it used in its ordinary sense. In the strife of the congregation, to set me apart at the waters before their eyes. These were the waters of Meribah at Kadesh in the wilderness of sin. So Moshe is told that he rebelled against Yahovah. Deuteronomy 3:26-28, Moshe relates this by saying, Yahovah was enraged with me because of you. It's not what the word avar means. Often, the correct word enaf is used to describe how Yahovah felt against Moshe. And that word does mean to be enraged with him. So I can see why the translators have used the word enraged here, even though that's not what the word avar means by anything other than perhaps by implication. But as we'll see, would not listen to me. And Yahovah said to me, enough of that. speak to me no more about this matter. Go up to the top of Pisgah, lift up your eyes westward and northward and southward and eastward, and look with your eyes, for you do not avar the Yarden. But charge Yehoshua, strengthen him, make him brave, for he does avar before this people, causes them to inherit the land which you see. So 3 uses of this same verb, avar, translated in the last 2 in this passage as to pass over. I've looked at this before, the idea that Yehovah was kind of past it with Moshe. He'd had enough. He had gone beyond that issue with Moshe. In Numbers 14, 40 to 41, we see this word used as well. It says, and they rose up early in the morning and went to the top of the mountain, saying, see, we have indeed sinned, but we shall go up to the place which Yehovah has spoken of. But Moshe said, why do you now avar the command of Yehovah? Or why do you now pass over the mouth of Yehovah, is what it really says. The peh is the mouth. Okay, by implication, the command. By implication, transgress the command, but it's actually to pass over it, to go beyond it. As we'll see, it's a result of their regard for the command. Why do you transgress the command? Why have you passed over the command, the mouth of Yehovah? Numbers 22:18 says, and Balaam answered and said to the servants of Balak, though Balak were to give me his house filled with silver and gold, I am unable to avar the word of Yehovah, my Elohim. I'm unable to pass over it, to go beyond it. See the word also in Deuteronomy 17:2. When there's found in your midst, in one of your cities, which Yehovah your Elohim is giving you, a man or a woman who does what is evil in the eyes of Yehovah your Elohim, in avaring his covenant. He goes past his covenant. He is past his covenant. Isaiah 24:5. For the earth has been defiled under its inhabitants, because they have avarred the Torah, changed the law, broken the everlasting covenant. Okay, but it's not transgressed. They have transgressed it, but the reason that they've transgressed it is because they've avarred it. They've gone past it. They've passed over it. They've gone beyond the covenant, beyond the Torah, beyond the covenant, as we read before. They've changed the law and they've broken the covenant. The wise fears and turns away from evil, but a fool rushes on and is reckless. A fool passes over evil and is reckless. Song of Solomon 5:6 says, I opened for my beloved, but my beloved had turned away. Again, it's not what turned away means. Avar, from where we get Ivri, which is a Hebrew, someone who has passed over. But my beloved had turned away. He'd gone. My soul went out when he spoke. I sought him, but I could not find him. I called him, but he gave me no answer. He'd avarred from the subject in Song of Solomon. As we see with Moshe, he had avarred Moshe. 2 Samuel 12:13. David said to Nathan, I have sinned against Yehovah. And Nathan said to David, also Yehovah has put away your sin? No, he's passed over your sin. He's beyond your sin. He's past your sin, so to speak. It's a very difficult word for us to translate into English, which is why we get so many different approximations of it. But it's all to do with the regard paid to something, and passing over it is, especially in this passage, in regards to the regard to which Yehovah pays to your sin. He's past it. He's gone past your sin. He's forgiven your sin. 2 Samuel 24:10 says, and the heart of David smote him after he had numbered the people, And David said to Yehovah, I have sinned greatly in what I have done, but now I pray, O Yehovah, avar the iniquity of your servant. Please move past the sin of your servant. Again, all these English words, they're just approximations, and trying to plug in the correct one is an exercise in futility. If we can understand what it is to avar something, we understand these passages much better. Joshua 7 verse 11 says, the Israel have sinned, and they've also avarred my covenant, which I commanded them. Deuteronomy 3:26 in the Septuagint is translated as thus. Yehovah, because of you, did not regard me. Okay, that's the translation of Yehovah avarred me because of you. Yehovah, because of you, did not regard me. Okay, it's not paying regard to something. It's being past something, being beyond it, regarding it no longer. And he hearkened not to me, because we are to regard the word of Yehovah, and as a result, to hearken to it because of the regard that we have for it. And Yehovah said to me, let it suffice thee, speak not of this matter to me anymore. He did not regard me, he was past it with me. That word, the Greek word that is used there, we see here to overlook, to take no notice of, or to not attend to have no regard for something. Deuteronomy 1:37-38 says, and Yehovah was enraged with me because of you. And my assumption here is that this is why avar is translated as enraged, because we have a very similar passage used elsewhere where it says that Yehovah was enaffed with me because of you. So the context in Scripture is that what Yehovah was, because of the children of Israel, was he was enaffed, which means enraged. To be avarred would be to be past or beyond something, and so I think they've interpreted it as being enraged. You do not go in there. Yehoshua, the son of Nun, who stands before you, he goes in there. So a very similar sentiment. When it says Yehovah was past it, or past me, the piece of information which is included is he says, enough, speak to me no more of this matter. Yehovah was enraged with me because of your words, and swore that I would not pass over the Jordan, and that I would not enter the good land which Yehovah your Elohim is giving you as an inheritance. So when it uses the word enough, very similar. It's describing the same events, but enough actually means enraged. Avar means to be past it, and when he says he was avarred with me, it says that he says, enough, speak to me no more of this matter, which would be a result of him being avarred with Moshe. Psalm 106, 32-33 gives us more information about exactly what happened in the event that we read about in the Torah portion. They provoked wrath at the waters of Meribah, and Moshe suffered on account of them. Okay, sometimes it says for your sake, and in English we could understand for your sake to mean for your benefit, but that's not what the Hebrew words mean. They mean because of you, on account of them. So Moshe suffered on account of them. And now we're going to see something very interesting about why. Yehovah said, you marad against me. What Psalm 106 reveals is they embittered his spirit, and he spoke rashly with his lips. And that's that same word, marah. And if we look at marah, we can see here in the definition, it says causatively make. What this word means in this context and how it's used in this passage in the Hebrew, it means not they embittered his spirit, they caused his spirit to rebel. That's literally what it says. It was because of the children of Israel So we can see here, they provoked wrath at the waters of Meribah. Moshe suffered on account of them, because they caused his spirit to rebel, and he spoke rashly with his lips. Now, obviously, Moshe carries culpability in that as well. It's not that Moshe was not to blame in this, just as we can be culpable for our own actions, but still be tempted by Hasatan. So both parties are culpable. Here, they caused his spirit to rebel, and he spoke rashly with his lips. That's what's actually going on in the events that we read of. Deuteronomy 32, verse 51 says, because you trespassed against me in the midst of the children of Israel at the waters of Meribah Kadesh. So, the word used here to describe what Moshe did against Yehovah is he ma'aled him. But ma'al is another word which is translated as trespassed or transgressed, like avar is. But what's actually going on with the word in the Hebrew reveals an awful lot more. And again, it's to do with the regard that is paid to Yehovah and his word. Okay, we see it here. We see against the husband, it is to act unfaithfully, act treacherously, by implication transgress. Again, this is the outline of biblical usage. So this is just how Strong's sees it being used in the King James Version. Okay, but what it means is to act unfaithfully towards. We see it when we read of the law of jealousy, when a woman acts unfaithfully towards her husband. So what Moshe did is he didn't believe Yehovah to treat him as set apart before the eyes of the children of Israel. He acted unfaithfully towards him. They caused his spirit to rebel against Yehovah. He rebelled against him. Here's Numbers 5, where it says, speak to the children of Israel, say to them, when a man's wife turns and has committed a trespass against him, I suppose that is what she has done, but that doesn't really give us the richness of the word ma'al. Has acted unfaithfully against him. 1 Chronicles 10:13 says, thus Shaul died for his trespass, which he had trespassed against Yehovah. No, his trespass, which he had acted unfaithfully against Yehovah. Why? Because he did not cherish the word of Yehovah. Again, this is about how one regards the word of Yehovah. Moshe did not treat Yehovah as set apart in the eyes of the children of Israel. He didn't believe him, and belief of the word is what comes from how we regard Yehovah's word. Do we act unfaithfully against it? Do we shamar it? Do we cherish it? Do we shema it? Do we hearken to it? If not, we act unfaithfully against Yehovah. We have avad his Torah, his teachings and instructions. We have avad his covenant. We've gone past his covenant, his teachings and instructions, which all again speaks of our regard for them, just as Yehovah's regard is spoken of towards Moshe when he was past it with Moshe. And he said, enough, speak to me no more of this matter. You're not going in, Joshua's going in. Joshua 7 verse 1 says, the children of Israel committed a trespass regarding that which is under the ban for Achan, son of Carmi. So he took the stuff that was supposed to be destroyed, he hid it under his tent. It says the children of Israel, they didn't commit a trespass. What this is really saying is that they acted unfaithfully towards him regarding that which is under the ban. This is how they regarded his word. He said, this stuff, destroy it. I don't want you to keep this stuff. Which did they regard more highly? Was it Yehovah's word, or was it the stuff? The same is true with sin in our lives. Do we set up an idol in our hearts when we regard something more highly or greater than we regard Yehovah's word? Because if we do, we ma'al Yehovah. We act unfaithfully towards him. And this is what Moshe was doing in this instance. He knew what he had been told. He also knew that he was angry, and he struck the rock, and he did what he wanted. And Yehovah charges him, acting unfaithfully towards him, rebelling against him, that he did not believe him, to treat him as holy in the eyes of the children of Israel. All of which speak of the regard that he had for Yehovah. You treat holy that which you regard as holy. The same is true with his word now for us. If we regard it and believe in it, we regard it as holy, we regard it as of supreme importance, then that will be reflected in how we act, as it was reflected in Moshe's actions, for which Yehovah was so angry with him that he did not enter into the promised land. In the third part, we're going to look at the serpents that were brought as a punishment upon the people, and what that teaches us about our regard for Yehovah and for his word.